Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Jesse Bailey, and I want to welcome you to a very encouraging night. That's right, we're going to be talking about comfort in the midst of COVID. We're going to talk about some good news tonight. But before we get into that, just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is The Bridge, and it is about bridging the gap between us and truth. Yes, we want unity amongst people, but we want more than anything unity between us and truth. And as we all seek truth together, eventually we'll come to the same place, bringing unity between people as well. But we don't sacrifice truth in order to gain unity, because that's a false unity. Unity has to come through an agreement with what is true. And we do that by exploring all sides of every issue that we talk about here so we can find truth. Now, we do that in three ways. Number one, we keep it balanced. That means that we have to look at everything from everyone's perspective. Number two, we keep it bold. That means we have the audacity to speak those things that are true, regardless of the consequence, especially in regards to culture and what's trending and what's not. And then third, and most importantly, we keep it biblical. We, at The Bridge, believe that the Bible is true, that Jesus is God, and that there is a hereafter. And everything that we look at is through that lens. That may not be your worldview, but we welcome all worldviews here as we discover and seek after truth. So with that, family, I want to remind everybody that you have an opportunity to participate in this as well. This is a conversation, not just information. And you do that through texting in your comments on the number that's there on the screen, or you can put your comments on Facebook or YouTube, whichever way you are joining us tonight. So family, with that, let's get into comfort in the midst of COVID. This was kind of birthed after watching Joe Biden's address on December 22nd, just a few days before Christmas. It was gloomy and ominous at best. You know, when you have someone who is supposing that they're going to come in and be president of the United States, you would like for them to come in with a positive outlook. And while being open and honest is extremely important, there is a way that we can approach things. But it seemed intentional almost in trying to put us in even more fear than we're in. This darker days are ahead of us was kind of disturbing just to hear him say that. And it was also confusing in light of the fact that where we are now versus where we were a year ago, or better, when COVID was discovered in late January last year. We have a year of watching this virus move through not just our nation, but the world. We have a year of the top minds in science and the medical field researching the heck out of this and looking for information. We now have a vaccine, which is what everyone's been wanting this entire time, and yet he says that darker days are ahead. How can the days be darker when we have more information and we have a vaccine and all these things that they say that they've been fighting for? At first it was just, we're going to slow the curve for 2 weeks to a month, and then it turned into a year-long effort, which kind of was coincidental in light of the election and everything that happened. It was a very interesting process that we saw happen, and now to have what many are assuming would be the next president of the United States come out and say that the darker days are ahead, that just didn't sit right with me. So as I have been doing this entire time, I just started doing some more research and looking into things, and in no particular order, we're going to go over some stuff tonight that I pray is an encouragement to you, and it's true. We want to look at, what are some of the actual numbers that we're dealing with? What do we know about COVID now that is no longer truly novel? We've seen it in action for a year. And what are some things that we can actually do outside of what's being pumped into our ears daily by the media? Wear a mask, social distance, wear a mask, social distance. Now get the shot, get the shot, get the shot. Isn't there anything else? Isn't there something else that we can do as intelligent human beings in making decisions for ourselves and for our personal health and for our family and those around us? Isn't there something that we can be doing and could have been doing this entire time? And the answer, of course, is yes, there is something. But first, I want to start with something that kind of has really encouraged me through all this, and that is the recent Barrington Declaration that was released by 3 doctors. If you haven't heard of the Barrington Declaration, I strongly encourage you to go and do a search real quick and go on and see what these 3 doctors penned, and has now been signed by over 50,000 doctors and medical workers around the world and on both sides of the aisle, left, right, conservative, liberal. They've all come together and signed this Barrington Declaration, basically stating that the manner in which the governments of the world have been handling the COVID crisis is not consistent with promoting optimal health to the majority of the population. In fact, according to these doctors, it is doing the exact opposite. It is hurting people. It is going to bring a greater amount of suffering than the virus itself, the manner in which it's been handled in terms of lockdowns, isolation, shutting down the economy and keeping people from going to work. It is having a devastating impact on the populations that are the most disadvantaged, including Black and Latino populations, as well as many people around the world who are already sick. It's making them sicker. So I want to just give you guys a couple quotes. Again, I don't have time to read the entire Barrington Declaration. It's actually very short, and I encourage you guys to do so. But this is just something that was written. It says, the most compassionate approach that balances the risks and benefits of reaching herd immunity is to allow those who are at minimal risk of death to live their lives normally, to build up immunity to the virus through natural infection, while better protecting those who are at highest risk. We call this focused protection. Adopting measures to protect the vulnerable should be the central aim of public health response to COVID-19. Now, again, these are not, scrubs saying this. There are 3 doctors who penned this from Harvard University, Oxford University, and Stanford University. These are well-respected physicians in their field, 2 of which, Dr. Kulldorff and Dr. Gupta, are epidemiologists. This is their field of study. Now, the reason this is so encouraging to me is because this is something that myself and many others who, without medical degree, without any real study in virology or epidemiology or anything like that, just through means of natural common sense and reason, were able to deduce the same thing. As you guys know, early on in The Bridge, we did an episode about the coronavirus, and one of my suggestions that I had done just in thought was, hey, why don't we protect the most vulnerable? We see that this virus, even earlier on, was having a devastating impact on the elderly and those who had pre-existing conditions. In fact, here's some good news. It's good news, but it's not good news at the same time. But according to the CDC, 94% of the people who died of COVID also had 2.6 pre-existing conditions on average prior to their death. Now, the reason that's good news is that 94% of people who passed away from COVID, it was because it was working in conjunction with another serious disease, whether it was diabetes, heart disease, or something of that nature. That is what was causing it. Now, the reason that's good news is that now we can pinpoint those who are most vulnerable. And this is something that is also echoed in the Barrington Declaration. So the good news is that we can identify that. So we know where it's attacking, whom it's attacking. It's also attacking the elderly, but not just the elderly. It's attacking those elderly, again, who have pre-existing conditions. The recovery rate from COVID-19 continues to go up as more and more people get this as we move towards herd immunity, which I want to talk about in just a moment. But it's at 99.97% among those who are of infant to 19 years old. And then it goes to 99.95%. The most at-risk demographic in terms of age are those who are 70 and above, and that is still at a 94% recovery rate. So you can see that this is still a very high percentage of people who are recovering from this, and that is good news. And my hope in sharing this good news is not to get political and say which side is right, but I want to begin through whatever means I can to bring down the level of fear. I've known two people that have gotten COVID, and both have confessed to me that during their time, even though their symptoms were difficult to deal with, but nothing that they couldn't handle. It was just an extremely uncomfortable flu-like sickness. And they both confessed to me that at certain points during their sickness, they were thinking, "Oh my gosh, am I going to die? Am I going to have to go to the hospital? Am I going to have to do this?" And that's been terrifying for a lot of people. It's brought a tremendous amount of stress. It's caused a lot of discord, and we can begin to be at ease as we see how this is impacting people. Now, I want to go back to something that I stated earlier, and that is the idea of herd immunity. A lot of times through the discussions that we've been having around COVID, herd immunity has been brought up as kind of like an alternative to a vaccine, or an alternative to social distancing, or an alternative to wearing masks and the such. But herd immunity is actually what every virus what we have to do as a society in order to overcome every virus. It has to be herd immunity. So even when they get a vaccine, the vaccine is designed to expose more people to the virus at a weakened state, so that more people have the immunities for it, and we build up herd immunity. So herd immunity is when there's enough people within the society itself that have been exposed to it, have gotten over it, that now we as a society are stronger, and it's better even for those who are more vulnerable to it. It's better for everybody. So this entire time, herd immunity is what we've been working towards, whether it's through natural infection or whether it's through a vaccine that's coming out. That is the goal. So it's not like herd immunity is just for all the tree huggers or the people that don't like masks. No, herd immunity is the ultimate goal for everybody. It's just how we're getting there that people are disagreeing on. And when you look at it, we're actually not in too much disagreement about a lot of things. Everybody wants to protect the most vulnerable, but there's a certain way that we want to be able to do that. And there's some things that we're seeing are actually more harmful. And we can talk about why they're doing these things, but I just want to talk about the impact that it's having. Let's talk about masks. There's been a lot of talk about masks. I want you guys to know that although I don't like wearing masks, I'm not opposed to people wearing masks. And I think that there's been some real polarization that's happened. People who don't like wearing masks now look at people who do wear masks as if they're idiots, as if there's something wrong with them. And that's not the proper thing to do. We don't know who's in their household, that they're doing their very best within whatever power they have to protect the people that they love. We don't know. So we can't judge people like that. And those people who believe that we have to wear masks, you look at people who don't wear masks as if we're murdering people, as if we're nothing but a bunch of killers and we don't care about anyone's life. And nothing could be further from the truth. I don't want to kill anybody. But what I don't want are my freedoms and my ability to make wise decisions based on my own research and what I want to do for me and my family. That's what I don't like. If you want to wear a mask, by all means, wear a mask. But I just don't want that imposed upon me and forcing me to do something that, according to science, really isn't that effective. And I want to show you. And this isn't me. These are just studies and reports that have actually been done by the CDC and the AAPS. So let's take a look at these right now. I just want to talk about masks right now. And my point in saying this is that you guys don't have to get so mad at people anymore. You can be at peace. You don't have to get mad at people who are wearing masks, and you don't have to get mad at people who are not wearing masks. Let people do what they're going to do. It's all feeding into what needs to happen ultimately. So let's take a look at this. I want you guys to see that this comes from the Centers for Disease Control. This comes direct from the CDC. This is a report that came out in May. Now, I've done some cutting in here so we can get right down to it. It was actually a long article, but this is a research study that was done for pandemic influenza, particularly on how protective measures such as hand washing and masks impact the spread of the disease. So these three paragraphs here come from the conclusion section of it. And it simply says, in this review, we did not find evidence to support a protective effect of personal protective measures or environmental measures in reducing influenza transmission. Now, let me pause right there. I know it's talking about influenza, but the reason that this is important is because the coronavirus particle and the influenza particle are similar in size. In terms of its actual size, they're very similar. So this study was researching how this spread in a controlled environment where people were using masks as opposed to where people weren't using masks. How effective was the use of masks? And now let's get back to it. This is what they're saying. It's proven to not be effective in reducing influenza transmission. Although these measures have mechanistic support based on our knowledge of how influenza is transmitted from person to person, randomized trials of hand hygiene and face masks have not demonstrated protection against laboratory-confirmed influenza 1, with exception, and I'll tell you what that exception is in just a minute. We identified only 2 RCTs on environmental cleaning and no RCTs on cough etiquette. So the next portion says, hand hygiene is a widely used intervention and has been shown to effectively reduce the transmission of gastrointestinal infections and respiratory infections. However, in our systematic review updating the findings of Wong, we did not find evidence of a major effect on hand hygiene on laboratory-confirmed influenza virus transmission. Nevertheless, hand hygiene might be included in influenza pandemic plans as part of a general hygiene and infection prevention. Finally, we did not find evidence that surgical type face masks are effective in reducing laboratory confirmed influenza transmission, either when worn by infected persons or by persons in general community to reduce their susceptibility. However, with a hand hygiene, face mask might be able to reduce the transmission of other infections and therefore have value in an influenza pandemic when healthcare resources are stretched. This is the CDC, family. So what they're saying is that masks are really not that effective in stopping the spread of the coronavirus or influenza or anything of that size, which is transmitted via respiratory. And it makes sense. When you wear a mask, everything can pass right through. If you can smell food through your mask, then you can get influenza through your mask. Now, if you layer it up, there's more effectiveness. And, they said that there was one exception, and that is the N5 masks. The N95 masks, I said N5, but it's N95 masks, are actually more effective because they don't just use physical material to stop the viruses. They actually use static electricity to electromagnetically bond to anything that would be coming through the mask. So those are more effective, and those do help. They actually will stop the spread of the virus or slow the spread of the virus and have proved to be much more effective. So what's the good news here? The good news is that if people are wearing masks, it might be helping a little bit. It's not helping a ton, so you don't need to get mad at anybody. Let's jump over to another source. I want to cite 2 sources on this. We have the CDC, which everyone is quoting. That is a direct report from them. But then we also have the AAPS. This is the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. This is a conglomerate of physicians from all over the United States who get together and they have peer-reviewed research papers that are printed and posted for the benefit of the general public. So on this, you can see here, looking at the top, it says review of masks against influenza, and this is a 2012 study that was done in Europe. So we are far enough away removed from the propaganda surrounding COVID-19 and everything that's going on. This is 8 years prior to. So this is information that they had then. Listen, it says, if you go down to the second section there that's underlined, it says the first randomized controlled trial of cloth masks in healthcare workers. This is 2015, Australia. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. We have two studies here. We have the one from 2012 in Europe and then the one from 2015 Australia. So 2012 in Europe, it says 17 eligible studies. One study had improvement with masks plus hand sanitizer. None of the studies established a conclusive relationship between masks, respirator use, or protection against influenza infection. This is an independent study, peer-reviewed in 2012 from Europe. Next, the one in Australia, 2015. Again, 5 years removed from everything. It says the first randomized controlled trial of cloth masks in healthcare workers. It says penetration of cloth masks by particles. 97% penetration there. That means 97% of the people that were wearing them, or 97% of particles were actually getting through. Medical masks, 44%. Now that's way better. That's way better. But 44% is still getting through, and that's just through the mask. That's not including the outside. That's not including the outside edges where it can come in because it's not closed off, or down here, or up through here, unless you got a cool beard like mine, and it helps protect you against COVID. This is my COVID protection right here. Let's continue. Now you see the 3M V-Flex N95. It had a 0.1% penetration. Why? Because it uses that static electricity. And the 3M 9320 N5 mask was even less than. So what are the conclusions? Cloth masks resulted in significantly higher rates of infection than medical masks, and also performed worse than the control arm of some who may have worn masks. The virus may survive on the surface of the face masks. Self-contamination through repeated use and improper doffing is possible. A contaminated cloth mask may transfer pathogen from the mask to the bare hands of the wearer. Moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may result in increased risk of infection. Cloth masks should not be recommended for healthcare workers, particularly in high-risk situations. Again, this is the AAPS. This is not Jesse's opinion. Next, you see the daily news cases per day. This is directly related to COVID. And in here, they highlight when indoor masks were mandated. So you see a spike there in April, and then it subsides through May, June, July. July, indoor masks are mandated, and all of a sudden, there's a huge spike immediately afterwards. You can see that right there. In other words, the use of masks proved to not be effective, rather, in preventing the increase of the disease. If you look over at the new confirmed COVID-19 cases per day normalized by population, this is according to Johns Hopkins, and this compares Sweden and Spain. Sweden, of course, which had no mask mandates, and Spain, of course, which had a tremendous lockdown that they had put in place. And you see they're a little sarcastic there. This is, again, I didn't put that in, look, mum, no mask. That is directly from the website of the AAPS. They had no masks, and there was zero increase during that time. As a matter of fact, there was an increase in Spain, and they did have masks that were implemented. So again, just letting you guys know, we don't have to be mad at people who want to wear masks. If we have to wear a mask, it is what it is. I don't like it. I wear it when I go into the stores. But the truth of the matter is, the only thing that masks really do is they make the individual feel like they're doing something to help. And that's something that's outlined in the New England Journal of Medicine. The New England Journal of Medicine actually says in one of their earlier reports that wearing of masks is not proven to be effective in preventing the spread of infectious disease, influenza, COVID, but more than anything, it can have a positive psychological effect by making people who are more worried feel like they're preventing sickness for themselves and perhaps preventing sickness from others. Also, there's no indication that wearing masks has any impact on the people that are getting COVID versus not getting COVID. There's not some huge study that says people who don't wear masks are getting more sick. As a matter of fact, most of the people who get tested for COVID are people who wear masks, whether it's because they have to wear them at the job and they have to get tested, or people that voluntarily get tested and they're wearing masks. people who don't like to wear masks also don't get tested. So the people that are getting sick and the ones that are testing positive for COVID are usually and more than likely the ones that are wearing masks. So in effect, what I'm saying is that they're not that effective. But again, that means that we don't have to get mad at each other. Couple other things that I want to bring up is that now that we know a little bit more about COVID, I mean, COVID, which is actually SARS-CoV-2, it is a respiratory disease. It stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome, and there was a CoV-1. CoV-2 is 78 to 80% genetically the same as SARS-CoV-1. So that means that 80% of this virus we already know about. And if I can throw this out there real quick, there's strong evidence that suggests that it was manufactured and in a lab. The fact that it came from the story that it came from a bat just really doesn't line up. And when you start studying how that would have to happen. In fact, there's a Dr. Li Meng who came out and said that she worked in the Wuhan lab, and there was strong evidence that she said that this was actually manufactured. So all that aside, we know a little bit more about it. Even if it was truly novel, we know 80% about this novel virus. And the good news with that is that we can understand its workings and how it's impacting people because it is just like the other one. Now let's talk about what we can do about this. Now, there's a lot of things that we can talk about just in terms of how many people have actually died. I think the CDC has over 300,000 people that have died from COVID-19. I don't trust those numbers simply because you see the cause of death in every other category. And I mean every other category decrease. So it's like every other sickness got cured and then COVID killed everybody. It doesn't make sense. Heart disease deaths have gone down. Cancer deaths have gone down. Suicide deaths, they're not reporting those, even though those are on the increase severely. All of a sudden, in some sectors of California, there's 0 flu cases that are being reported. So there's a little suspect right there. Also, the PCR tests that they're using in order to determine whether you have COVID or not, these tests are based on genetic material. So if you have CoV-1 or anything related to it genetically, and they can pick up that genetic material, so you actually might be getting a positive COVID test, and it's actually not COVID-19. It might be SARS-CoV-1 or perhaps an H1N1 or something that has a genetic code that is similar. They come from very similar families. Now, I want to say this: COVID is not the flu. Genetically, influenza comes from a different family. They're closely related, but influenza and SARS are different families. The common cold is a different family, even though the symptoms and the attack on the body are very similar. They're different in terms of how they interact. That is just a reality, but these tests pick up on it is my point. So the numbers that we're seeing coming from the CDC are dramatically questionable. I'll just say they're questionable at best in light of everything else that kind of goes along with it. I don't trust it one bit. So the fact that they keep saying so many people have died and so people have died, it just doesn't line up, especially from so many personal stories that I've heard from medical workers in the hospitals, in the emergency rooms, in the ICUs, in kidney dialysis rooms, and seeing time and time again people being put as COVID, people dying from COVID. I mean, we all know that the hospitals were getting paid and are still getting paid for anyone who has COVID and anyone who dies of COVID. And that they have incentive to put COVID on their papers. So I don't trust those numbers. So those are more than likely elevated. So we don't need to worry so much about that. Now, I will say this, that those who do fall into those vulnerable categories, absolutely, we need to be careful. We need to be looking out for them. We need to be watchful. But one of the things that we have not heard from the media, from the big medical professionals in our nation that are always on the news is what else we can do. Everybody's talking about wear a mask, which, as we just saw, is not effective. Social distance, again, which is not very effective. In fact, in one study, they said social distancing doesn't really work at all. Social distancing only works for large particles. Large particles that can carry the virus that come out of your mouth, like if you accidentally spit or there's larger water vapor. Those particles go about 6 feet and then they drop to the ground because of their weight. Now, the interesting thing about that is those particles are the particles that can actually be stopped by a mask. So if you're wearing a mask, then you don't have to be 6 feet apart because those particles will get stopped by a mask. The more dangerous ones, or the more, I don't want to say dangerous, the ones that travel further are the atomized viruses. So that means that they're so small, they're not in water droplets, they're literally in the air. They call it atomized because they're like the size of atoms almost. Those can go through the mask, and those can linger in the air up to 27 feet. So the ones that actually get stopped by the mask will drop to the ground within 6 feet, but the ones that go through it are actually 27 feet they can go. So again, it's not really effective. So masks aren't really that effective. Social distancing, scientifically, is not that effective. And then they want us all to get this vaccine that they're mass producing, 2.6 billion that are coming out. The only problem with that is if vaccines were effective, then why every year are they telling us to get vaccines? And why is it that every year, I've talked to so many people that say, man, I get the flu every year. That's why I get the flu shot. I'm like, well, it doesn't seem to be working then, does it? We've had the flu vaccine for decades, but we don't see the flu going anywhere. So what makes us think that if we get a COVID vaccine, that all of a sudden COVID is going to disappear? That is not the most effective way. None of these things that the media is pumping are the most effective things to do. And it requires us waiting on a vaccine. But the truth of the matter is that God created our bodies in an amazing way. He has created our bodies to fight anything that would come into our bodies, so long as we take care of them and we strengthen them and we use wisdom in order to do so. So the good news is there's stuff that you can be doing right now that will not just benefit you, but benefit the community and help us reach herd immunity. So here's a couple things that you can do to get yourself stronger. Number one, we need to watch what we eat and just be healthy in general. People always say, oh, well, it's President Trump's fault that the United States was hit so poorly. We're getting slammed with COVID. Number one, I don't believe the numbers. Number two, there's a strategic advantage that the liberals have gained by promoting this and pumping this and blaming it on President Trump. And also, there's just an interesting stat that we fail to acknowledge during this entire time. How about the fact that the United States of America reflects a 36% or even higher now rate of obesity? We have one of the most unhealthy populations in the world because we overindulge. So taking care of ourselves and not overindulging in food, especially in food that is not healthy for us, fast food all the time and all these things with all these additives, that's not healthy. So if we eat a bunch of unhealthy food and we have the highest obesity rates among the developed world, well then of course we're going to see higher levels of sickness and disease, and not just with COVID, but with everything. That weakens our immune system, and that is a reality. So you can do something about it. You're not powerless against COVID or any other virus or sickness or disease that would come at you. There's just simple things that you can do: eating healthy, drinking lots of water, and exercising, making sure that you're active. That is how our bodies are designed. Now, in terms of what we can do right now in order to strengthen our immune system, there's some very basic things that we can do that we all need to put into action right now, especially as we're entering into this season, which is typically flu season, which is why we see an increase. By the way, we're seeing an increase in ICUs, and we are seeing an increase in people going to the hospital. However, what they don't tell you is that every year in America, you see an increase in people going to the hospital. And as a matter of fact, many hospitals will operate at above 100% capacity during this time of year because of the flu and other factors, just because of holidays and the season that we're in. So it's not uncommon. It's just not always reported. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, just to hopefully bring peace. But back to the things that we can do to make ourselves healthier. Number one, vitamin D. You guys need to get vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually not a vitamin. It's actually a hormone that your body produces when it comes in contact with sunlight. This is why isolating people and telling them to stay inside is one of the worst things you can do for your health. Vitamin D is extremely important. There are two types of vitamin D. There's vitamin D3 and there's vitamin D2. Vitamin D2 is the kind that you can get from a plant. Mushrooms have it, and you can get it as a supplement that way. Vitamin D3 is actually produced in the body when you come in contact with sunlight. The sun brings life. And when we get vitamin D, it strengthens our body's immune system. It's essential for our adaptive immune system. We have two types of immune system. We have an adaptive immune system, and then we also have what is the word? Word escapes me right now. But it's basically an immune system that you're born with that fights, and then you have an adaptive immune system that grows and changes as it's exposed to the environment. Well, vitamin D helps strengthen your adaptive immune system so that you can get stronger and stronger as you get exposed to different viruses and bacteria throughout your life. If you have a deficiency in vitamin D, then you weaken your immune system, and there's strong evidence that when you increase your vitamin D, that you have a 35% greater chance of fighting off viruses and bacteria than someone who's deficient. As a matter of fact, most people in the United States are deficient. I think they said up to 40% of people in America are deficient of vitamin D. That's because we don't go outside enough. We need to go outside and be in the sun more. You need to take walks. You need to go outside and play sports. We're spending all of our time working indoors, and then we get home and we sit indoors and we play video games, we watch movies. We don't get out and do anything active. You know, it's interesting, the homeless population, which we have the blessing of being able to work with quite a bit at our church, Legacy Family Church. We're out there working with them, and I'm talking with them, and I know many of them, and I ask them all the time. I say, hey, what's COVID doing out here to the homeless population? Like, nobody's got COVID. Nobody has COVID. You know why they don't have COVID out on the street? You know why the homeless aren't getting it? Because they're in the sun all the time. They're active and moving. They're not overeating most of the time. And they're exposed to bacteria and viruses on a regular basis, so their immune system is constantly adapting. They're not getting sick. They're not. So we can do that. We can have a lifestyle that promotes being in the sun and getting vitamin D. You guys got to be out there. That right there will do a tremendous amount of good for you. In fact, the British Medical Journal in February 2017 showed a dramatic increase in resistance to viral infection when people increase their vitamin D intake. So this isn't just, you know, random stuff. This is something that we can do. Being out in the sun, as God intended, strengthens us against viruses. In fact, let me see. There's an article. Hold on, let me look at my notes here. Yes. It was reviewed by the Public Library of Science 1, and it shows that there was a 54% reduction in the risk of coronavirus when vitamin D supplementation and sun exposure was increased. So those who had sufficient vitamin D levels were 54% less likely to get or contract or be negatively impacted by the coronavirus. Incredible. Again, this is the Public Library of Science 1. So we got to increase. We got to increase vitamin D. We got to increase our vitamin D. Basically, what it does is it supports and strengthens our ability to fight off sickness and disease. Amazing. All you got to do is take vitamins. Now, I'm not saying that if you take vitamins, you're not going to get sick. What I am saying is that if you do this, you're less likely to get sick. Far less likely than just wearing a mask or social distancing. Number 2, in my research, I found that vitamin A is extremely important. Vitamin A is another important vitamin in strengthening our immune system and our ability to fight coronavirus or any other virus that comes in. Vitamin A is usually found in meat. So sorry to all you vegans out there, but vitamin A is found usually in meat, specifically liver, beef liver, cod liver oil, things like that, fish, eggs, cheese. You find vitamin A in all of those things. Vitamin A is used by the body to strengthen the epithelial tissue in our body. The epithelial tissue in our body is the tissue that covers and protects us. So it's like our skin, but not just our skin, but internally. Everything that we are is covered in this epithelial tissue. So it covers our skin. It also aligns our intestines, inside of our mouth. This epithelial tissue is the first defense against viruses. When you take vitamin A, it strengthens this layer and makes it more effective at keeping out viruses and things that don't belong. It strengthens the very cells and allows the cell walls to do their job. They're supposed to be selectively permeable. Selectively permeable means that they discern and detect what should come in and what should not come in. And when you take vitamin A, it strengthens your bodies and it allows it to do its job better. So vitamin A is extremely important. So if you increase your vitamin A, increase your vitamin D, you are far more likely to be strengthened and not get these sicknesses and these viruses. You'll be able to fight them off. Along with that, we also remember vitamin C is important. Taking zinc is important. All of these are extremely important so that we can strengthen our bodies. These are natural things that you can do. And people who have been doing this, man, they don't get sick. I mean, praise the Lord. I really and rarely get sick, but I'm always taking vitamin D. I purpose to be in the sun. I take vitamin A. My family and I, we watch what I eat thanks to my lovely wife. She makes sure that we eat well and we eat healthy and keeps us on track. We drink a lot of water. Just those little things that we can do to help strengthen our bodies. Now, I know there's certain things that are just beyond our control. There may be certain genetic predispositions that we have, things that we were born with, and those are all factors. However, we can only be stronger by taking care of our bodies and doing what's best and helping support our body get stronger. Now I want to go back a little bit and talk about herd immunity. Herd immunity. This is something that we have to achieve. And there's been a lot of stuff being pumped by the media trying to keep us isolated. And I have my theories on why, but that's not what this particular show is for. I want to talk about, again, just the dissension and the disagreement and the animosity that there are from people who believe in wearing masks towards those who don't, and those who don't towards people who do. I'm just seeing so much stuff on social media. But let me offer this to you. Each one is actually doing their part to help promote the health of the other. Let me explain. Those who, by reason of mostly personality, is what I'm noticing, are more risk adverse, tend to be the ones who are more apt to stay at home, wear the mask, and social distance and do all those things. Good. That is good for you. That does help slow down the spread of the disease by having a part of the population that is going to stay at home and going to be a little bit more reserved in how they operate. For those of us who are a little bit more outgoing and like to take risks, that's a personality that tends to be more like, hey, what's the big deal? We see what's going on. I'm a strong, healthy person. Let me go out and let me get back to work. Absolutely. Both are needed, because those who are more open to being out, that's needed so that we can actually get infected and achieve herd immunity. And those who want to stay at home, that's perfectly fine for you, because you actually help slow the spread. So what I'm saying is that as a community, as a body of believers, as a body of Americans, we're actually helping each other out. So there's no need to be mad. If you're not comfortable being out and about, then stay home. You're stopping the slow. But don't get mad at the people who are going to go out and work and do what they need to do, because by them doing that, they're actually helping us reach herd immunity at a faster rate. And likewise, those who want to be out and go to work, don't be mad at the people who want to stay at home, because they're actually helping to slow the spread so it can happen at a relatively easy time. Now, do I believe that it's balanced? No. I think we need to open up the schools. I think we need to let people go back to work. I think that this is having a devastating impact. But we can be civil to each other, understanding that each one will play a role. The people that are staying at home, they might be vulnerable. They might be with someone who's vulnerable. And anytime someone is at risk, or they're seeing someone that they love who's at high risk, they're going to be more emotionally attached to the position that they're in. And we can make allowance for that. But those of you who are emotionally attached to the ones that you're trying to protect do not need to impose that on everyone else who's going out to work. I think that we need to open up. I think businesses need to just open. This Barrington Declaration has said that there's going to be challenges and difficulties that come up that are going to be irreversible if we don't open up. And again, remember, this is 50,000 doctors around and medical workers around the world who are in agreement with this. This isn't just a couple of kooky out there doctors or something like that. These are respected physicians from around the world. So I believe strongly, let's open up and let's achieve herd immunity. We have actually probably hurt ourselves more than anything. Right now, you look at California, who is one of the strictest in terms of their lockdowns and all that. Governor Newsom is now infamous for all of his lockdowns and the draconian rules that he's put in place. And right now, California, at least according to the reports, has some of the highest cases of coronavirus. Again, I don't 100% trust the numbers, but it's just interesting that the state that has the strongest restrictions has the highest level now. How can that be? I'm walking around, I'm seeing everybody in masks in the store. I'm seeing everybody social distancing in the stores and in the public arena. But here we are as Californians, a very liberal state. Very, very liberal. As a matter of fact, if you think as a conservative, you're definitely the minority here, at least when it comes to media attention. So I just want to offer that out there. I'm going to pause right now, and I'm going to take some questions. I want to talk to you guys. What's going on in your hearts? What are you guys thinking? Let me throw this up here again. 818-835-4030. I'm going to go to the lines right now and see if there's anybody who has any questions. And I'm going to jump over to Facebook and YouTube and see what we got going on over here. All right. Not seeing any comments on Facebook. Let me jump over real quick and let's look at YouTube. What's going on over here? All right. Comment here. It says, I work in Kaiser Panorama City. The hospital is full. ICU is full. Why? Yes, the population in the area are unhealthy. Yeah. We've got to reach out to the Latino and Black communities about just basic health things. It's not a race thing. It's a culture thing. It's a culture of not being as healthy. That's why we're seeing it impacting people in these communities. And the ICUs are getting full because of that. So it's about taking care of our physical health. If we do that, we'll be stronger. Thank you, Charity, for being on and sharing that. What about the health of those who breathe their own CO2? Yeah, that's not healthy. Breathing your own CO2 over and over and over again is not healthy. I haven't seen very many studies on that, but I know that we're supposed to breathe oxygen, and wearing a mask, especially the thicker ones that would be effective, unless they have a highly developed HEPA filtration system on them, it's going to make it difficult for us to breathe the level of oxygen that we need. I know I've heard a lot of people at least saying that they've been getting headaches since this has happened, but I don't have any solid research on that right now. Let's see. The masks are not good for the immune system. And why aren't these people promoting to boost the immune system? Exactly. Why don't we hear stuff about that? Well, the reason we don't hear about it is because these pharmaceutical companies stand to make billions and billions of dollars. Billions of dollars off of this. They don't want us to just be healthy. They want us to be scared and to take their vaccine. That's pretty much how it's working out. Amen. It says they're not. Says the other issue is that the healthcare field is not approaching this pandemic with therapeutic interventions. Steroids have been found to help with the inflammation that can happen. Absolutely, there are certain steroids that have been used for other things like asthma that are effective, but for some reason, the medical field, the FDA, the NIH, all these fields, organizations have not been open to the repurposing of drugs. There was a doctor. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can pull up his video real quick and show it to you guys. But there was a doctor who recently testified before Congress and basically said that there's a drug called ivermectin, and this drug ivermectin is effective in treating and even preventing with 100%, listen, 100% effectiveness, the prevention of COVID, according to their studies. I'm going to see if I can pull up that video and show it to you guys in just a second. But that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Let me go and check out a couple other comments. Amen. Yeah. God gave us herbs, not steroids, vaccines, etc. Steroids, if it's going to prevent someone from dying, absolutely. Of course, we want to do our best to not have to use anything that's man-made injected into our body. But we don't live in a perfect world. And God has given us the wisdom through medication and through doctors to help our bodies in areas that they may be weak in. One steroid that's been used is a drug called Pulmicort. Pulmicort is a steroid that's usually given to patients that have asthma. My son was on Pulmicort for a while because he would have severe asthma attacks, and it helped him keep his alveoli and his bronchioles open. So last year when we had COVID, we had that in the house. And, my daughter had a little bit of shortness of breath, but if we'd known that was something that was we could use, that would have been nice to know. So they can be used. Absolutely. Ginger, turmeric, oregano, garlic, bay leaves, cloves, eucalyptus. Yes, all that. Anything that came from the earth, God has blessed us to be able to use that. And it's not just so that we can make our food taste good. There are health benefits to that actually keep us in good health. The sun, the larger light heals. Amen. Ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine have been found to help, yes, but those studies are just attacked because it does not fit their agenda. Absolutely. Hydroxychloroquine has been found to work. They've actually released studies now that say, hey, you know what? Everybody was right. It does work. I took hydroxychloroquine when I went to Kenya a few years back. You had to take it for a number of days before you went. You had to take it the entire time you were there. And you had to take it for a couple days when you came back because it fights malaria. I took that for weeks, and now all of a sudden they're saying, oh, this is high risk. You don't want to take that. Be careful. They've been giving it to people for years and years and years. Over 60 years, hydroxychloroquine has been used to treat other sicknesses and other diseases, and yet now they want to say you can't use it, and you can't find it anywhere. Same thing with ivermectin. People are going to want that, and guess what? They're going to put it on lockdown because it's too cost effective. They need the billions that they're going to get from this vaccine. Let's see. Yeah, mental health is a huge problem with the lockdown. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me down and depressed. How many teens have committed suicide. I mean, there's a nurse who's a good friend of mine, and she says, and this is a nurse who goes around to different hospitals because of the nature of her job. She says she hasn't had to pick up one COVID teen, but she's picked up several teens who have tried to commit suicide because of these lockdowns. It's devastating. It's devastating. The mental health aspect is huge. Also, marriages under stress. Domestic violence is increasing. We're seeing a tremendous amount of mental health issues arising out of this. The lockdown is not good. Yeah, amen. Gorilla's the strongest animal in the jungle, and it's vegan. That's right. Yeah, Dr. Bricks was with her family for Christmas, yet she tells the public to stay away from family, not to travel. That's one of the things that's been concerning to me as well, is the hypocrisy. If these Democratic politicians really believed that masks worked, really believed that social distancing was important, then why do they time and time again keep breaking that? Nancy Pelosi caught in a hair salon when she's telling everybody else to get out without a mask. Governor Newsom going out to dinner, an expensive dinner, with all the people from the health department, no masks, not social distancing, sitting inside. If you really believed it was a danger, you'd be obeying it. But that shows me you know it's not. You know that it's not a big deal. Otherwise, you'd be doing it. We have mayors from other cities, all these Democrats saying one thing and doing another. That tells me you don't believe what you're saying. And that tells me you know it's not true. You know it's not true. That's just the way it is. Yeah, ivermectin supported by top experts. Miraculous potential. Yes. Now watch. Go try and get it and see what happens. Go see what happens. That's good. We have a nurse online that says that at their hospital they actually do administer steroid therapy. And I can't pronounce this steroid. Dexamethasone 4 is a steroid for COVID patients that are critically ill. Amen. I'm glad they're getting that level of treatment. Let me see. See if we've got any other. Oh wait, here we go. Let's see. It says yes, it's population control and part of their eugenics plan. I wasn't planning on going there tonight, family, but we're gonna have to do it. Yes. Isn't it interesting that this COVID comes out amidst Bill Gates's 5-year long plan of talking to the world about overpopulation and population control? Isn't it interesting that this COVID comes out and it seems to be targeting the elderly and the disadvantaged minorities? Isn't it interesting how he wants to test everything in Africa? Isn't it interesting that he and his wife Melinda come out and say, oh, we want the first people to get this to be black men, when their family has links to Planned Parenthood, which was founded by Margaret Sanger, a world-renowned racist and eugenicist, who also has links to Nazi Germany. It's just very interesting to me. All this stuff goes out, and these are the people that are loudest about it. It's just interesting. And not just interesting, it's diabolical. It's absolutely diabolical. All right, let me see. Let me jump over, see if we got any other questions. All right, don't see any other questions coming in. I'm gonna give me a minute. You guys keep talking amongst yourself. Man, oh yeah, we got comments on eugenics. It's real, and people are fighting this. I did an episode on systemic racism, and I talk about eugenics in that. Go back and find the episode on systemic racism and listen to that. It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. Let me see if I can find this video with the doctors on it, talking specifically about ivermectin. Well, you know what? If you guys do a search on ivermectin, if you do a Google search, do doctor testifies ivermectin, something like that, you'll find it. But he talks about it as a miraculous drug, and he talks about how he doesn't use that lightly. This is an incredible advancement, and he's on this video begging for people to come on. For the government to come on board and just look at the research. Just see what he's doing. He's saying, look, I'm watching people die. But the truth is, they don't want it. If they really wanted to save people's lives, if they really wanted to help people, they wouldn't be telling people, lock down, stay in your homes, wear a mask that doesn't work, and social distance. They would be saying, let's test these drugs, let's get them approved, and let's get them out. But the reason they're not is because Big Pharma is big money. These companies, the links between them, it's outrageous. And we want to call these conspiracy theories. No, this is conspiracy reality. This is conspiracy reality, people. There are forces out there that don't care whether you live or die. As a matter of fact, they want to depopulate the earth. There's a huge move towards that. They want to depopulate the earth. And this is just one of the many ways that they're trying to do that. It is. It just is. And they're not even shy about it. We'll do a whole show just on the plan to depopulate and all the things that are happening right now, all the things that are being pumped out there, why they're promoting certain agendas. Why do you think they're promoting abortion? Why do you think they're promoting homosexuality and transgenderism? Because you don't reproduce. Why do you think this COVID is out? Why do you think that they're telling everybody the darker days are ahead? Because they want them to be darker. There's a geopolitical movement right now to try and establish a one world type government system that brings us into complete control because they think they need to control the world. They don't trust God. And that's just the truth of it. I'll tell you that right now. Let's take a couple more questions, and then we're running out of time here. Yes. Pierre Corey is the doctor who testified before Congress. Thank you. Says it's probably been censored now. No, it actually hasn't, because I saw it not too long ago. Vitamin D3, sunshine, and zinc is healthy living without drugs. Amen. Amen. Go outside. Be in the sun. That's what does it. You know, that's one of the reasons why flu increases during the winter months, is because you have less sunlight. You have less sun, you have less vitamin D, and your immune system gets weakened, so people get sick. You ever wondered why there's a flu season? You ever wonder why it's in winter? It's not because you're cold, it's because there's less sunlight. You go outside less. That's what's happening, and that's what's been happening this entire year. They're putting everybody into this winter state where you're not in the sun. It's absolute insanity. Now, another thing I want to encourage you guys with, and I'm gonna leave you with this, something that I wanted to mention earlier. The reality is that this plandemic is being touted as if it could be like the Spanish flu that we saw, in the early 20th century. Let me put your mind at ease with that. Let me give you some comfort with that, because that's what everybody's afraid of. It's going to kill everybody. No, the likelihood of a Spanish flu type pandemic ever happening again is slim to none, and here's why. One of the reasons that pandemics happen is because you have isolated groups of people that are developing, in a sense, their own viruses, and they're local to their area because there's not a lot of travel. This is why many of the Native Americans, the Mayans, the Aztecs, this is why many of them died off when the Spaniards came over, because they brought new diseases to them that they weren't aware of. That their immune system wasn't aware of and they couldn't deal with, so they died from it, even though the people from Spain were fine. But because the world is so well traveled now, you have cross-contamination all over the place, so people are exposed to viruses all over the world. So it's very unlikely that we're going to have something of that magnitude. What causes things of that magnitude is isolation. So we don't want to be isolated. We want to get out, we want to move, but we want to do so with the healthy people and then protect the vulnerable so we can achieve herd immunity. Family, this is good news. Darker days are not ahead. They do not need to be dark. That is a lie and an unfortunate communication by Joe Biden. That was a planned and strategic fear-mongering tactic. Family, we do not have to be afraid of anything. We just have to be wise and allow God's work to do its work. So take care of yourself. Get your vitamin D. Be out in the sun. Get your vitamin A. Take your zinc. Take your vitamin C. Exercise. Laugh. Be joyful. Laughter doeth good like the medicine, the Bible says. Enjoy life. This is man's all, the Bible says in Ecclesiastes. Enjoy your time. Darker days are not ahead so long as we do what is right in the eyes of God and use the wisdom that he's given us. Family, I pray that you enjoyed the talk tonight. I pray that you were encouraged. The next time I see you, we will be in the new year. So God bless you and Happy New Year. And I pray God's peace, his protection, and his provision over you and your families. God bless, and we'll see you next time on The Bridge. And until then, keep it balanced, keep it bold, and keep it biblical. Bye-bye. you.